Hello and welcome everybody. This is Jörn Menninger recording from Frankfurt am Main, and I want to start today with a sentence that should make you sit up. The next AI bottleneck may not be chips, it may be electricity. We've spent 2 years talking about GPUs, foundation models, cloud capacity, and data centers. But behind every AI system sits a physical constraint. Power. Cheap power. Reliable power. Scalable. Grid-connected, clean power. Without it, no data center. Without data centers, no commute. Without compute, no AI services, no industrial automation, no sovereign AI strategy. And that is why report most of you have probably not read suddenly becomes one of the most strategically important documents of the year for the German startup scene. I'm talking about the GreenTech Monitor 2026, just published by the German Startup Association, Startuprad.io. On its surface, it looks like another industrial stocktake of the green tech sector. Underneath, it is a competitiveness report, a national security report, an AI infrastructure report. So today, I want to talk you through the GreenTech Monitor 2026, and I want to argue something that goes against the standard climate tech narrative. Green tech in Germany is no longer mainly a climate sector. It is becoming the infrastructure layer for Germany's next industrial economy. And if Germany gets the financing right, that infrastructure layer is also where the AI economy gets its physical foundation. Green tech leaves the climate niche. Let me reframe what we are actually looking at. For most of the last decade, the conversation about green tech sounded like a moral conversation. Climate, emissions, ESG, save the planet. That framing did the sector some good in 2018, 2019, and 2020. It also made green tech sound like a policy category, like an industry that needed to be subsidized because it was important. That framing is now out of date. According to the GreenTech Monitor 2026, Germany has roughly 2,900 active green techs. To be precise, 2,903. These companies operate across energy, mobility, industry, environmental technology, buildings, agriculture, software, and the circular economy. Together, they form what is probably the largest green tech ecosystem in Europe. But the more important fact is the framing change. In the foreword of the monitor, Verena Pauster of the Startuprad and Niels Aldag, the founder and CEO of Sunfire, write, and I'm paraphrasing here, that without a powerful energy infrastructure, you do not have a competitive data center economy. And without green tech, you do not have a modern industrial location. Read that twice. Without a powerful energy infrastructure, you do not have a competitive data center economy. Without green tech, you do not have a modern industrial location. That is not a climate sentence. This is an industrial policy sentence. It is a competitiveness sentence, and it is the new operating frame for green tech in Germany in 2026. Energy startups become strategic infrastructure. So let me get into the numbers. The green tech sector in Germany now has roughly 675 energy startups. That is a category by itself, and the share is rising. In 2025, 107 new energy startups were founded in Germany, which represents 34% of all new green tech foundings. In 2020, that share was just 19%. In 2018, it was 21%. The energy share of new green tech foundings has effectively doubled in 7 years. But why? The monitor is unambiguous. The AI boom is driving electricity demand. German data centers power consumption nearly doubled between 2015 and 2025, from 14 to almost 26 terawatt hours a year. The Fraunhofer IZM projects it will reach 48.3 terawatt hours by 2035. That is on top of an industrial base that is already electrifying, an EV fleet that needs charging, and a building stock where heat pumps just took 50% of new heating system installations for the first time in 2025. So when you map all that demand against an aging grid, against fossil fuel volatility, against the geopolitics of imported oil and gas, energy stops being a side project. It becomes the central infrastructure question of the next decade. And the startup landscape reflects that. The monitor breakdown of energy startup technology areas looks like this. 39% of energy startups work on energy sources and carriers. Think solar, wind, hydrogen, power to X. 35% work on grid infrastructure and storage, batteries, virtual power plants, grid software. 11% on buildings and heat, 8% on transport and EV batteries, 5% on industrial process technology, and 1% on other areas. If you map those categories against the AI bottleneck, they cover almost the full stack. Generation, storage, grid stability, building energy, industrial electrification. This is no longer climate tech. This is power supply for the operating system of the industrial economy. Fossil dependence and the strategic case. Now, let me make the strategic case sharper, because the AI angle is only half of it. The other half is that Germany imports almost everything when it comes to fossil energy. In 2024, the net cost of fossil energy imports to Germany was 72 billion euros. In 2022, at the peak of the energy shock, that number was 142.5 billion euros, almost 1/3 of the entire federal budget of, let's say, 500 billion in a single year. That number alone explains why energy resilience is not a soft topic anymore. It is fiscal policy, it is industrial policy, and it is national security policy. This is the macro case for green tech as infrastructure. Every euro that flows out of Germany into oil and gas imports is a euro that does not stay in the German economy. Every percentage point of import dependence is a percentage point of geopolitical vulnerability. Every spike in fossil prices, and oil has just moved up 110% over the last 5 years, gas at one point spiked 800%, is a hit to industrial competitiveness. So when a German battery storage startup, or a green hydrogen startup, or a grid software startup, or a heat pump installer reduces that import bill by even a small percentage, that is not just an environmental contribution, it is structural improvements to the cost base of the German economy. The energy transition is no longer only about emissions, it's about who controls the cost base of the next industrial economy. And this is where Germany has genuine substance, not just ambition, substance. Germany's green tech substance. Research, industry, deep tech. Here is where the GreenTech Monitor 2026 makes its strongest positive case for Germany. 62% of German green tech startups receive direct support from universities or research institutions. 69% cooperate with established companies. 66% of green tech founders say their product emerged directly from scientific research. 16% of green tech startups qualify as deep tech compared to 11% in the broader Deutsche Startup Monitor. 44% of green techs produce physical product, hardware, versus a much lower share in the general startup population. This is the German green tech profile in one line. Research anchored, industry connected, hardware heavy, deep tech leaning. This is exactly the kind of ecosystem you want if you are trying to build energy infrastructure for the next industrial economy. You need engineering. You need patent depth. You need customers in the Mittelstand, you need industrial reference deployments. Germany has all of those structurally, more so than almost every other European economy. And the company list reflects it. Voltfang in Aachen, an RWTH spin-out running second life EV batteries into industrial scale, stationary storage, with Aldi Nord and Stuttgart Airport as customers, a Series B and a 250 million euro framework partnership. Sunfire in Dresden now has over 700 employees, gigawatt electrolyzer production capacity, exporting across Europe. CMBLU Energy in Alzenau in Bavaria just minted as Germany's newest GreenTech unicorn in May 2026 with a long-duration organic flow battery, a 5 gigawatt-hour framework agreement with the utility Uniper. 1,5 in Hamburg, already a unicorn with a Heartbeat AI energy management platform, turning home installations into a virtual power plant. Think Empal in Berlin, the solar subscription leader, over 110,000 systems installed, more than 1 billion euros in 2025 in revenue, 2 landmark asset-backed securitization totaling around 1 billion euros in 2025. Innoratec in Karlsruhe, a kit spin-out producing e-fuels with the EU's Refuel EU aviation mandate, creating guaranteed demand. Scilab in Aachen, another RWTH Aachen spin-out, building Europe's first industrial-scale lithium battery recycling facility in Dormagen with a 55 million Series A and over 60 million in grant funding. Next Wave in Freiburg, a Fraunhofer ISE spin-out building next-generation silicon wafer manufacturing to give Europe a domestic solar supply chain. Marvel Fusion in Munich, Europe's best-funded fusion startup with around 385 million euros raised. Alteva in Cologne, building Europe's lithium metal and lithium sulfur cells with prototypes shipping summer 2026. Cynio, C-Y-N-I-O, I think, in Bitterfeld, Wolfen, a TU Berg Academy Freiberg. It's a technical university spin-off replacing toxic phosgene with CO2 in industrial chemistry. This is not a sector that lacks ideas. This is not a sector that lacks engineering. This is not a sector that lacks industrial customers. So, what does it lack? Capital. The funding gap. Germany builds. The US scales. This is the contradiction at the heart of the GreenTech Monitor 2026, and it is the same contradiction that runs through every honest German startup conversation in 2026, including our coverage. From 2021 to 2025, US energy startups raised approximately 46.1 billion euros. German energy startups raised approximately 5.5 billion. That is more than 8 times as much capital flowing into US energy startups in absolute terms. Even on a per capita basis, which corrects for the size of the economies, US per capita energy startup investment over those 5 years was 136 euros. The German figure was 66 euros. The US invests about twice as much per person in energy startups as Germany does. And here is the part that matters most. The gap is not evenly distributed across funding stages. At seed, the gap is small. Average German seed rounds are around 3.7 million euros. US seed rounds are around 4.8. Almost identical. At Series A, the gap widens to 18.6 million for Germany versus 25.2 million for the US. By Series B and later, the gap explodes. Average German Series B plus rounds are 53.9, say 54 million euros. Average US B plus rounds are 88.4 million euros. That is the difference of about 35 million euros per round at the most capital intense stage of company building. Annualized, The monitor calculates that German energy startups receive roughly 500 million euros less per year than they would if their rounds were sized at US levels. And the broader GreenTech sector across all categories has an annual funding gap of around 1 billion euros, with about 667 million of the gap concentrated at Series B and later, so 2/3. This is what the monitor calls accurately a financing problem. Not an invention problem, not a science problem, not an industrial customer problem, a capitalization problem at exactly the stage where hardware-heavy companies need to build factories, certify products, secure project financing, and sign multi-year industrial contracts. A capitalization problem at exactly the stage where hardware-heavy companies need to build factories, certify products, secure project finance, and sign multi-year industrial contracts. The German GreenTech problem is not invention, it's, as so frequently, capitalization. And the consequences is that German companies move slower than US competitors into global markets. In infrastructure markets, slower often means losing. Slower means an American competitor signs the Texas utility contract first. Slower means an American battery startup wins the data center power deal in Virginia. Slower means a French electrolyzer scales into Spain before a German can. Policy: the state must become an infrastructure customer, not just a grand machine. So, what does Germany do about this? The monitor gives us 5 clear Handlungsfelder, 5 policy levers that any serious green tech industrial strategy has to pull at the same time. 1. Startup dynamics. Better IP transfer from universities. More predictable early stage financing. Faster registration. The EU Inc. initiative. The WIN initiative. The Deutschlandfonds. Things that are happening now, but need to actually translate into checks being written. 2. Treat energy policy and digital policy as one thing. The monitor literally calls this out. A serious AI strategy without an energy strategy is incomplete. You cannot have a German AI hub if industrial electricity is unreliable or expensive. The high-tech agenda has to actually deliver on this. 3. The state has to become an anchor customer. German public procurement laws have historically been a wall for startups. The 100,000 euro threshold, the bureaucracy, the slow timelines. The monitor proposes, and I think this is the strongest single recommendation, that procurement laws to be reformed to give young companies a real shot at being suppliers to public infrastructure. Grid modernization, public buildings, data center power supplies, battery storage for resilience. If the state wants infrastructure, it must buy infrastructure. 4. Tighter coupling between startups and the Mittelstand. The 69% cooperation rate is already strong, but it can become stronger with cooperation vouchers, M&A tax incentives, and structured procurement pilots that turn corporates into reference customers rather than innovation theater. 5. Again, scale up capital. The WIN initiative, first of its kind project financing instrument, the Deutschlandfonds, and a real European Capital Markets Union. This is where the €1 billion annual funding gap closes, or doesn't. The €500 billion special infrastructure fund the MERS coalition committed to in 2025, with 100 billion allocated to climate and transformation fund and 10 billion in public capital for the Deutschlandfonds to leverage over 100 billion in private capital. Those are the headline numbers, but what actually matters is execution velocity. Whether a German battery storage startup can sign a 250 million euro framework with an offer taker in 12 months instead of 36. Whether a hydrogen project can permit and finance and build inside this electoral cycle instead of the next one. The question is no longer whether Germany can fund another pilot. The question is whether Germany can buy, finance, permit, and deploy startup-built infrastructure fast enough. Recommendations for the audience. Now the takeaways. By audience, if you're a founder building in this space, this is not positioning yourself only as a climate company. Position around infrastructure, resilience, energy cost reduction, AI readiness, industrial policy, and strategic independence. Those framings open larger doors. Built for deployment, not for demonstration. The German market rewards companies that can certify, industrialize, and sell into real infrastructure environments. Use AI demand as your new commercial wedge. Data centers, compute infrastructure, industrial AI, smart grids. These are buyers with budgets and urgency. And design your financing strategy 2 rounds ahead, because hardware companies need a mix of equity, venture debt, grants, project finance, and corporate offtake from the seed stage onwards. If you're an investor, look beyond software margins. The biggest green tech opportunities in Germany may look capital intense on the surface, but they sit closer to infrastructure economics than venture economics. Follow the bottlenecks: storage, grids, batteries, energy management, hydrogen logistics, industrial electrification, circular battery materials, and watch the barbell market. Capital is concentrating into fewer, larger rounds. Early stage is thinning. If you can write a Series A check in these markets, you have unusual leverage. If you are a corporate, treat green tech partnerships as competitiveness insurance. Every cost, supply resilience, industrial decarbonization, and compliance are all board level issues now. Move the pilot theater to procurement. Use startups to solve bottlenecks in operations, manufacturing, finance, real estate, and supply chains, and become a scale partner. German green tech startups need industrial reference customers more than they need another innovation showcase. If you're a policymaker, connect AI policy and energy policy, close the scale-up financing gap, reform procurement so startups can sell to the state, accelerate IP transfer, and think in infrastructure markets, not subsidy programs. The goal is not another pilot. The goal is market formation and scale deployment. If you are an international investor, and many of you are listening right now, Germany is undercapitalized, not underbuilt. The country has unusual substance in green tech, and German domestic capital is structurally too cautious at growth stage. This is your entry point. So the real question is not whether Germany has green tech startups. It does. The real question is whether Germany can turn green tech from a sector into industrial infrastructure before other markets scale faster. Germany has the research. It has the engineering base. It has industrial customers. It has nearly 700 active energy startups. It has founders working on storage, hydrogen, batteries, grid software, circular materials, fusion, and industrial processes. It has the political moment, a coalition that committed a 500 billion euro infrastructure fund and a 10 billion euro Deutschlandfonds that could matter if execution moves at startup speed instead of bureaucratic speed. But the bottleneck is capital. The bottleneck is deployment velocity. And in some segments, the bottleneck is whether the state will become a serious customer instead of staying a grant machine. If Germany gets this right, green tech becomes the foundation for AI infrastructure, industrial renewal, and energy sovereignty. If Germany gets it wrong, it will once again produce world-class technology and watch someone else scale it. This is why I think green tech is no longer a niche. It is what Germans call a Standortfrage, a question about the country's industrial location itself. And in 2026, it may be one of the most important industrial stories in Germany. This is Joe Manager for Startup Radio, Europe's voice on startups, venture capital, and innovation. I'll be back next week. Until then.
That's all, folks. Find more news, streams, events, and interviews at www.startuprad.io. Remember, Sharing is caring.